Hello, everyone, and welcome to the latest episode of the Metabolism and Menopause podcast. My name is Stephanie, and I am your host and CEO of Vitality OET. We are a women's nutrition, health, and fitness company that focuses predominantly on women's hormones, particularly as they start going through perimenopause and onwards. We know that you start experiencing so many changes in this time of your life, whether it be hot flashes, night sweats, irritability, brain fog, or waking around the middle that seems to have come out of absolutely nowhere despite you not changing anything. So you go back to your tried and true methods of cutting calories, cutting carbs, doing a bunch of cardio, yet nothing seems to work, you're more tired, and you might even see the scale go in the opposite direction than what you want. But we know now that your body is inherently different than what it was prior to you experiencing these hormonal changes. So our mission here is to help you understand what changes your body goes through in this time of your life so you can finally reach your health and fitness goals, live a life full of vitality, feel in control and at home in your body again, and really understand how to take care of this new body of yours. So today I have the wonderful Coach Brittany here on the show with us. She is one of the coaches here at Vitality, and she is a doula. She has so much information and training in pelvic floor and pelvic pain, in obviously delivery, in nutrition and hormones, all the things. And today we want to do a podcast together all about libido and sex in menopause because nobody talks about it, which is crazy. And sexual health is such an important part of our lives. It is a huge part of a whole healthy person. It's also the most taboo thing to talk about, right? It's something that changes and shifts from puberties through our 20s, 30s, 40s, and beyond. And it is an ever-changing landscape, and that is what can make it so complicated and so frustrating. And people get very embarrassed and ashamed about it. So we want to talk about all the things, including stress and diet, exercise, relationship satisfaction, body image, hormones. All these things play a huge role in how sexual we're feeling and things like that. So Coach Brittany and I are going to break down all the things that we hear women talk about or we've experienced in our program as well that we really think all women should learn more about and not be so nervous to talk about. So let's just hop right into it.
Yeah, I think this is a really, really important piece of the puzzle because it's an area that I work with clients and it takes them a really long time to work up to talking to me about this, but it's one of the biggest problems that there is out there. And so, I was getting ready for this podcast and I'm talking to my husband. I'm like, oh my gosh, this might be a little taboo to say some of these things because people are so afraid of talking about this, but it's so important. I think sex is something that we shouldn't be ashamed of. And we should be able to speak super freely about it to friends, to coaches that we work with, to our doctors, to our partners. There's so many people who don't talk to each other about sex, right? And we need to break the taboo around that area. Far too long have women suffered from poor sexual function, among lots of other medical issues. But this has been a big one. And it's due to it being like a taboo subject. Oh, we don't speak about that. That's inappropriate to talk about, or it's uncomfortable and you don't know how to approach that. And it's also just not very understood by the medical community. It's not, obviously if a man has a hard time getting an erection, they do a study on it and they fix it. But if a woman has a hard time, orgasming or with desire, they're just like, yeah, you kind of got to deal with it. It's just what happens, and that's baloney. We don't need to do that anymore. So first, I think connection is essential to understanding our libido, and communication is the first form of connection. And that's communication with, like I mentioned, to either your partner, with your coach, with your doctor, with yourself, right? Because that's a big part of that. So Steph and I always joke that whenever we talk, we always give doom and gloom first, and then we get to the good stuff. So I want to actually give some good stuff first, right? So I want to start with the benefits of actually having sex, because there are a ton of them, because people are probably like, I don't have desire, but also am I really missing out on anything? That's kind of fine, right? So the benefits are huge. The first one is it's empowering. And it can actually be a confidence booster when we're doing something with our bodies that hopefully feels good. And if it doesn't feel good, we're going to chat about that later. But we're releasing really, really good feel good hormones and chemicals in our body. They help to increase mood. They increase enjoyment. They increase connection. The second thing is it can reduce anxiety and stress, believe it or not. Now, anxiety and stress play a huge role in not having a libido, but they can also help relieve anxiety and stress. So the feel-good, hormones and chemicals that I mentioned are the biggest ones are dopamine and oxytocin. And the main player in that one is the oxytocin. And if you have oxytocin present in your system, biologically, you cannot have cortisol in your system, and vice versa. If you have a lot of cortisol in your system, biologically, you won't have a lot of oxytocin in your system. So we want to increase the oxytocin to help alleviate cortisol. The third thing is like mood improvement. So again, those fantastic hormones, oxytocin and dopamine, they help lower stress, they increase satisfaction, they increase mood. Having sex can promote a better night's sleep, right? Just again, feeling really good. And then it also can enhance connection with your partner. And over time, that's something that I think a lot of people really struggle with, especially if you've been in a relationship for a very long time. Connection often wanes, and we have to figure out new ways to connect with them. So
I'm sure there's so many people listening right now that were like, hold on, oxytocin and sex improves cortisol? I think I solved my problems.
I will do that all the time.
So now we're going to talk a little bit about what the most common issues are. So often there are three main things that we're going to hear from our clients. And typically this is going to be pain, dryness, or no libido. First and foremost, know that there is no technical definition of what constitutes a quote unquote normal libido. It is what's normal for you, and it ebbs and it flows in life. It's going to change based on what's going on. So do not feel like you aren't measuring up, or don't let someone make you feel like you are abnormal or there's something wrong with you. Hormonal changes throughout our lives and throughout our cycles can impact our sexual desire, our interest, as well as our hormonal imbalances. And the biggest ones are going to be low testosterone, which is a control for libido and desire, low estrogen, which can cause vaginal dryness, lower desire, and just in general make it harder to become aroused, and cortisol, which can make everything come to a screeching halt, pump the brakes.
Yeah, we talk about cortisol a lot here, and it has a huge role in everything in our body, right? I think what's really important, I love that, we're pointing out like there is no normal framework for what normal libido looks like, right? So as much or as little as you are comfortable with, want, desire, like that's normal, right? Because that can be normal for your time frame. But I also think like it's super important to know and remember like that women's sexual responses are so much more complex than a man's. A man is very visual. He's like, I look at you, I think that you're hot, and I'm ready, right? Whereas for women, it's like an interplay of a physiological response, a hormonal response, a psychological response, emotional and visual and tactile touch, right? All of those things kind of have to come together for us in order for us to be like, oh yeah, this feels really good. Oh yeah, I'm turned on. Oh yeah, I want that, right? And our libidos are influenced by so many areas, right? Our sense of well-being, our physical health, hormones, our stress levels, what our relationship is like, our satisfaction with that relationship, connection, intimacy, and not just in like sexual intimacy, but being intimate in ways of like, I feel that connection with my partner. I'm intimate by holding hands and having conversations. We look each other in the eye. Those are also different forms of intimacy that are really important.
Yeah, so now we're going to touch a little bit on what the common factors that can disrupt your sex drive. So first ones are like medical conditions like fatigue. If you're exhausted, that's not on your mind. Let's face it, right? Like it's not happening. Things like endometriosis, chronic pelvic pain, depression, diabetes, heart disease, hypothyroidism, chronic fatigue syndrome, and cancers. Those can all really disrupt your sex drive because when you're dealing with things like that and you're tired and you're in pain, of course you don't want to do that. Like that makes total sense. Then we have some medications like antidepressants. This is really important because a lot of perimenopausal women are prescribed antidepressants for perimenopause type symptoms like hot flashes and night sweats. So that's something to be aware of. There can also be like the antihypertensives, sedatives, antipsychotics, beta blockers. Those can all negatively affect your desire as well. Then we have emotions like feeling stressed out or being worried, having a history of trauma, thoughts about certain taboos or the way we were brought up to think about sex, relationship betrayals, negative body image, low self-esteem. Those are obviously going to contribute as well. Then we have life factors like a busy life, demands of motherhood or parenting, changes in attraction to partners, feeling of overwhelm with life. Then we have partner factors like depression in our partners or struggles with anxiety. Maybe there's drinking too much alcohol, medications that they're using, emotional unavailability or taboos or beliefs around sex. Like those things that affect you, if they're going through that too, it's obviously going to affect the relationship too. And then we have hormones. Lower estrogen makes libido lower, can cause vaginal dryness, thinner vaginal tissues, and can make sex painful or uncomfortable. And then you have estrogen dominance or excess estrogen, which can lead to weight gain, bloating, fatigue, menstrual cycle issues if you're still having a cycle, and lowered libido. Then we have low progesterone levels, which can also affect libido. If we have low levels, it can mean, again, lower libido. And if we have progesterone but not enough compared to estrogen, that can cause low libido from that estrogen dominance. So there's a lot of things here that really interplay. And like you have to look at the whole system, really take inventory of everything. So it's not necessarily like there's something wrong with you or things aren't right. Like there's a lot of factors that go into this to really kind of go through and think and then give yourself a little bit of grace and then obviously working towards improving those things as well.
Yeah, I think it's important because I'm sure everybody listening is probably like, oh yeah, check. I have multiple factors, right? And it all, as you can see, they're all different areas. They all play together. So it's really important to know, like, you're right, nothing is wrong with you. These are factors in your life, but we're going to talk about things like that if you are bumping up against that wall where you don't have a libido, you don't have desire, you have vaginal dryness, you have pain. We want to know, like, what are things that we can do that can be really helpful? What can kind of help us move through that, right? So like some of the things that we're going to talk about, they might be a little bit taboo, right? They might be things that we're like not used to hearing, or maybe like we've never talked about or even done or even thought of, right? But I really, really hope like in this conversation that it can bring options, it can bring relief, it can bring changes to your sexual health and libido. So like nobody's saying like, oh yeah, everything listed here, you gotta try it. But consider the options and consider like what might work for you, your partner, your lifestyle, that kind of thing. You know, this is meant to be like empowering so you can understand that what you're feeling is normal, but also empowering to know that there are things that you can do to change it and to like feel good in your body, right? So I'm going to start with like the first thing that we can do, and it's spice things up, right? So sometimes it's just as simple as needing to find a new move or a new groove, right? So we change, our libidos change, our sexual desire changes throughout our whole entire life. What we liked in our 20s, probably not the same as in our 40s. And what used to turn us on in the past, even if it's something that we really loved, you know, especially if we've been in a long-term relationship with our partner, maybe it just doesn't do it anymore because we have changed, right? And so we need to find like what works now. And so that might be trying different positions. It might be bringing in toys. It might be trying a different kind of a lube or starting to use one, especially if we're having more vaginal pain. Maybe it's exploring fantasies with your partner. Maybe having those conversations with them. Or just connecting in ways that like don't include like the penetrative sex. Because I think when we talk about sex, people go, oh, it's penetrative sex, right? Like we're going to actually have sex. But it isn't always about that. It can be massage. It could be kissing. It could just be foreplay, increasing emotional intimacy, which has like nothing to do with being in the bedroom, right? That's having conversations, like I mentioned, holding hands, looking each other in the eye, doing things together that are outside of the bedroom that are joyful for both of you guys to do, right?
I think it's like funny that you said that like what like used to turn you on or things like that is different. And I forget, it wasn't on like a reel or something. And Taylor was like, is this true? And it was like, all girls, like if your husband puts like a tea towel on his shoulder and he's shirtless and has a backwards hat on and he's doing dishes, you want to jump his bones. He's like, is this for real? And I'm like, honestly, kind of, yeah. Like it's great. It's a great look. So, maybe you just like slide some reels in of like, maybe it's just really hot when he's in his boxers taking the garbage out. I don't know what it is, but maybe it works for you.
Maybe it does.
I can't remember where that popped up, but it was so funny. I wish I could find that because he was like, is this a thing? And I was like, yes. And he's like, what? Which is hilarious because now he exclusively does the dishes in our house.
Exactly.
Okay. He's also just better at loading the dishwasher. I will be honest. I tried to help him one day and he was like, just stop. You do the laundry. I'll handle this because I just know how it works better. I'm like, you know what? That's okay. I'm fine with that option. Okay. Anyways, back on track here. Talking about self-care. Everyone's like, yeah. We know self-care, blah, 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 blah. But it's a much needed part of health in general, and especially for your nervous system and sexual health. So keep in mind that when we are stressed, the pleasure centers of our brain are kind of dulled or they're almost like turned off. So touch just doesn't feel as good. Orgasms don't feel as good. We aren't able to achieve them, or our brains are like completely somewhere else. So think of self-care of something that like brings you joy, focuses on your needs, your wants, reduces stress. Things like getting some regular exercise in, eating healthfully, being mindful, practicing some breathing techniques can all bring awareness and presence that can actually improve your libido and satisfaction in the bedroom. Dr. Emily Morse has some great questions to ask yourself if you're finding it hard to become aroused or you just feel like your sexual desire is gone. And the first one is, am I loving my body? 2, does my everyday routine leave me feeling vibrant and alive? And if not, what changes can be made? And like self-care doesn't always have to be a massage or a bubble bath. Like I hate baths. Like to me, I'm just like, no, not happening. I just genuinely hate them. And everyone's like, oh, just take a bubble bath or an Epsom salt bath. And like, that sounds like a terrible time. Like I just cannot do it. But for me, it's more like I like reading or journaling. I used to have like adult coloring books that I liked a lot. And just things that kind of fill up your cup and make you feel good. So you're like energized again, like you're doing something that you genuinely enjoy. And I think everyone thinks it has to be like, meditation or yoga. And it's like, it doesn't have to be those things. It's what are the things that actually make you happy? That's going to help support your nervous system, obviously, unless you're using like HIIT training and like cardio as like relaxation. That's just like burning out your nervous system more. So that doesn't really count. But like doing things that fill up your cup within reason, obviously, that's not going to like overtax your system.
Yeah, I think that's really important because I know whenever we talk about self-care, people are like, oh, okay, I got to do a bath and I got to get a massage and I got to block out 2 hours a time. And it's not about that. It's about really finding the thing that is the most helpful and joyful for you. I talk about this with my clients and I tell them, think about like all your senses. I don't care if it's like sitting in a chair with a really fuzzy blanket and a warm cup of coffee because you like the way that feels. That's bringing out oxytocin. That is self-care. And they're like, oh, it's as simple as that. I'm like, yes, it is. So like, if you like to look at something, if you like to, if it's staring out the window at the beautiful sunrise, like whatever it might be, that is a form of self-care. It's as simple as that, right? So I'm going to talk about lube and the power of lube. So sometimes it's like not necessarily a problem of like lack of desire, right? But it could be a lack of enjoyment or lack of pleasure because there's pain. So as our hormones shift and decline, and sometimes it happens just because we're more stressed or more fatigued, we can have more vaginal dryness, our vaginal tissues become thinner, and we just have a harder time becoming more adequately lubricated on our own, right? So this is where like lube, total lifesaver. The next point that we talk about is going to be equally as important, and it kind of goes hand in hand with this lube conversation. So listen there. But lube can be really helpful in creating less dryness, more elasticity in the vaginal tissue, less friction of the bad kind. Longer term options for this would be like HRT or an estrogen cream. Some people don't want to use that, or medically they can't. So lube would work really, really great. There are 3 different types of lubes. I like to cover all of them because they're all different from each other, and I think it's important to know what's out there. And then I'm going to mention at the end of that, like what we can do on our own to like naturally help with our own lubrication. So 3 types of lubes are going to be water-based lubricants. Coconut is a favorite of mine. It does dry quickly. It doesn't damage condoms if you do use those. It is less irritating to the vagina. It washes off super easy. The second type is a silicone-based lubricant. Uberlube is fantastic. It offers the most amount of lubrication. It can be a little bit more on the sticky side, but it does work in water. So if you want a steamy shower sesh, that's going to be really helpful there. And it's longer lasting. And then the last kind is an oil lubricant. And then Foria is actually my favorite. And it does not contain like irritating additives. So if you're really sensitive, that could be really helpful for you there. It can damage latex condoms, so always be aware of that. And then there are some oils that it can increase your risk of UTIs, but the one in Foria has been shown to be really, really safe. So that's why I really like that brand. So I think it's important that you have options when it comes to that. Try out different kinds, see what works for you. But also really helpful to know what we can do ourselves to increase our own natural lubrication, right? So again, pelvic floor exercises, that seems to always come up every single time I chat. But by doing pelvic floor exercises, we're increasing our blood flow to our lower body, our pelvic region, increasing blood flow to the tissue, creating more natural lubrication. Things like regular exercise to help reduce stress. It increases also whole body circulation and blood flow. And also exercise can help with keeping testosterone levels adequate in females, right? So especially like those heavier weight sessions, longer rest periods that we always advocate for. And then supplements, like making sure we have adequate vitamin D on board. That's a natural vaginal moisturizer, Sea buckthorn is great for vaginal elasticity. It's great for perimenopause and menopause. Taking adequate fish oil and omegas, right, to help increase estrogen and support your levels. And also DHEA is an option. It reduces dryness. It alleviates symptoms of perimenopause and menopause overall.
Yeah, and I think at least when I was like, I don't know, probably early 20s, I remember people were talking about it and I was like, oh my gosh, like, is something wrong if like you need that? Like, is there something wrong with your body? Like, I just thought it was just like if you can't, like there's something wrong. Like, and I thought it was like something to be like embarrassed of. And like I had friends that would like talk about it. And I remember being like, oh my gosh, like I feel so bad for you if you're dealing with all these things. And it's just like, no, like it happens and it's fine. But like, to me, it was like, your body's not working properly. Something is wrong. Like, that's so embarrassing. You should be ashamed. And then like, obviously as I got older and started getting into all these things, it was like, oh, like not a big deal. But I remember like when like someone suggested it for the first time, I was just like, what? Oh, like I just thought it was just like this shameful thing, which is wild.
I know, right? I used to work for an OBGYN and we would get lube samples all the time. And so she's always like handing them out to all of us. Here, take it home, try it. And so I have like all these lubes and my husband's like, do we need that? Is there a problem? And I'm like, it doesn't mean that there's a problem. It just means like it's there as an option. You can use it. It might be helpful. Like they feel different ways, and so it's interesting, like the beliefs and thoughts that we have around lube. So
yeah, and I think it's just because like this stuff is so taboo and no one wants to talk about it, right? So yeah. Okay, so next one is foreplay for real. So as we age, it can definitely take us a lot longer to become aroused and adequately lubricated. So spending more time on foreplay can be incredibly important. It's not just about the destination of where you're going, it's how to get there. You're enjoying the process, you're enjoying the journey. Just like we talk about nutrition coaching, this is the exact same. So foreplay serves as a physical and emotional purpose by helping the body and the mind be ready for sex. It is more than just a physical thing for women. We need the mind, the emotions, and the body on board. As women age, we need about 20 minutes on average of foreplay in order to become fully aroused. So like, think about it. If your mind is somewhere else, like you can't focus on what you're doing and how you're feeling and enjoying it. You're making lists in your head of what you need to get done or what you forgot about at work or things like that. Like, obviously, it's not going to be a good experience. You're probably going to have trouble with lubrication. You're not present. Like, it is something you have to like think about more and work your way up into, because like it's not just going to be like, okay, I'm ready. Like, it's a process that takes time.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And I think that's where men and women are so different, because men really are very like I mentioned, right? I'm visual. I see you. Okay, cool. I'm turned on. Whereas women, it's like, no, I need way more than that. And as we age, it just is a little bit harder to kind of fully get there. So I think that learning those things and learning how to incorporate foreplay is a super, super important part. Kind of goes hand in hand with the lube, right? Because we can't be fully lubricated if we don't have enough foreplay. And sometimes we use lube in the foreplay and it makes it so much easier. But this, next one is also, I think, equally as important. Having a conversation, right? So this is where breaking that like taboo around sex can be super helpful. If you are struggling, if you are in pain, if you want to change things, you need to have a conversation with either your partner. If you're in pain, you need to have a conversation with your doctor. Studies show that when partners are open and honest in communication, like they're able to connect on a deeper level and work through sexual issues and make a stronger, deeper connection. And that itself can actually result in an increased libido in women, because communication, connection, and safety are all extremely important parts of a woman's libido. It's not just about seeing or feeling something. It's about how connected, how safe we feel in our situation with our partner in our relationship. And I think like having a conversation with your doctor is just as important. It might be really uncomfortable. And if it is really uncomfortable and you find yourself not able to have that conversation, it might mean that you need to look for another doctor who you are comfortable having that conversation with. But talking with your doctor, you can get some help for pain, vaginal dryness, if you're having chronic UTIs, pelvic floor issues, kind of all of those more medical-based issues. That's going to be a really good source of help for you.
Yeah, and like having the conversation with your partner about like the safety aspect in particular is a big one, because the amount of women that I know that have experienced sexual trauma or rape or whatever it may be is pretty high. So if there's anything that, like, I think having that conversation with your partner so they know that, talking about like potential triggers and stuff is important. Like I personally like experienced sexual abuse in my past as well. It's not something I ever like talk about a lot because it happened with like a partner and I felt like it wasn't like as aggressive enough, if that makes sense, or like not as bad as other people's stories. But I mean, I had someone force themselves on me and I told them no, and they threw me to the ground and did it anyways, even though I was like in tears. But for me, I'm like, okay, it wasn't like I got kidnapped or it happened at a bar, or like I had a friend that woke up after being raped naked on the side of a road once because she was drugged at like a bar or something like that. So for me, I was like, it's not important enough. And I had never told anyone until Taylor actually. And we had like a long conversation about it. But like I think it's important. Like it sucks to bring it up and it's hard to have those conversations because it brings up a lot of hurt, but that'll also make you feel safer and more comfortable with your partner. Your partner is less likely to do something that might like accidentally trigger you that you like, you know, they don't know. So how are they supposed to like avoid it? You know what I mean? So having the conversation, communicating about it is important. But I think the safety aspect of it is like huge. In like all aspects of your relationship, because like for me, I was used to like whatever, like abuse and stuff in my past, and even from my dad too. And it was like, okay, I told Taylor, I'm like, I don't do good when like if someone starts yelling, I'm not listening to anything you say. My body is like calculating, how am I going to get out of here? how can I move myself closer to a door? Like, it doesn't matter on the situation. So it's like, that helped our communication. Not that he's ever like yelled, and I don't think he would, but just like made him aware when we're having like a discussion, if it's like even a little bit argumentative, I need a little bit of space, because otherwise I'm not listening. I'm just, if things escalate, which like they never would because he's amazing, but like if things escalate, I need an exit plan, and that's the only thing I'm focusing on. So I think it's important to talk about those things, because like that naturally will just make you feel safer. They know all the things, and it'll be easier to feel close and be able to get there, as opposed to like them not having any idea, and then like you're in your head low-key panicking or thinking about things, or it brings up those memories, and then they might be upset because like you're not into it and they feel like turned away or whatever it is, right? So I think that's a very, very big part of it. Or if you can communicate that stuff, I think it sets you up for a lot more success. And honestly, you'll just be happier in your relationship too, that they like know those things.
I agree. I mean, safety, that's a huge aspect of how we feel in our relationship with our partner in all areas, right? Like, whether can we emotionally open up to them? Can we physically open up to them? You know, how are you feeling safe, that you feel like you can let your guard down in your relationship? I have a very similar past to you. I had a handful of extremely abusive boyfriends, one whom also, you know, assaulted me and raped me, but I never called it that because, again, it was my boyfriend. And I did not tell my husband. I did not tell him until we were married for 5 years. And then I opened up about it. And having that conversation completely changed the way that our relationship kind of went forward. And he understood a lot more about where my anxiety came from, my sexual response, why I was triggered to certain things. I didn't even realize I was so triggered to certain things until I started actually telling this whole entire story from beginning to end. And I'm like, I've never told anybody this before. And it's just been inside me for the past 12, 14 years, you know? So yeah, it's a huge piece. It's really important to have those conversations.
Yeah. And it's like, it's tough, but I think it makes it a lot easier to like be with someone emotionally, physically, like all the ways, when you can like share that. Cause then they know where you're coming from. And then they won't take it personally if like you respond negatively or something, because they understand where it's coming from and they can help you through it as well, which I think is like huge. Okay. Back on track here. So next one is work with the change and embrace it. This is embracing the changes you need to make in your sex life. So maybe it is this longer foreplay session. Maybe it means including lube, finding ways to fit in more self-care so you can feel better in your own skin. Maybe it's working on your hormone changes. Things like HRT or vaginal estrogen creams are options, but also things like ashwagandha have been shown to reduce stress and overwhelm and improve sexual function in healthy females. However, don't take it if you're on thyroid medications, because a lot of thyroid medications do not react well with ashwagandha, so always check with your doctor. But it also helps stimulate nitric oxide production. So ashwagandha can actually help increase blood flow to the genitals, improve arousal, increase your sex drive, vaginal lubrication, boost your mood, and all kinds of other wonderful benefits. Also remember that sex begets words today. The more sex that you have and turned on you'll be, the more you'll see an increase in libido. So it's something you almost have to like work through, because like the more that you do it, the easier it'll become and you'll enjoy it more, right? That's just like with anything that you're doing. It takes time to be like, okay, I can do this, back on the horse. We're great. We're doing it, you know? So give yourself patience and grace, because your body is going through a lot of changes. Maybe you've been through a lot of trauma, recent stressors, hormone changes, right? All of these things. So learning your body again and understanding how it functions and what you need and doing the self-care and like give yourself grace. It's going to take time, especially if like you have been experiencing this stuff for a long time and now you're focusing on doing the things to improve stuff. It's going to take time. So like, don't be super hard on yourself, because that's not gonna help you in the long run. So give yourself grace, communicate with your partner how you're feeling, and that should help and go a long way.
Yeah, absolutely. So I'm going to talk probably about one of the most uncomfortable things we're going to mention, and it's relearning yourself. So solo sex, right? So it's really, really important to understand you, your body, your desires, what turns you on, what doesn't turn you on, what's a trigger for you, right? And remember, these things can change. So the touch or the moves that used to work years ago might not now. Mae West, who was an actress way back in the 40s and 50s, I think she said it best. She said, good sex is like a good bridge game. If you don't have a good partner, you better have a good hand. So as women, like, we're not really given a playbook on how to have a pleasurable sex life, right? I think boys are talked about it a lot more. They are told like, yep, that's normal to touch yourself. It's okay. But girls is kind of like, oh, no, we don't talk about that, right? So like, we need to figure it out. And on average, women have fewer orgasms than any other demographic out there. So they have fewer orgasms than men. They have fewer orgasms than gay men, fewer orgasms than women with women in lesbian relationships. Just in women in general, we have less orgasms, right? So we really need to learn what works for us. And I really think that you can look at masturbation as a form of self-care, right? And that might be really uncomfortable for some people to hear. It can help you relearn yourself. It can help you learn what your sexual power is. It can help you learn your turn-ons. It will help you learn your body. And knowing all of those things can then actually make you feel really sexy, right? But it can also increase your sex drive and desire itself. So what does turn you on? Like, make a list. Play with the mood, play with the environment, the time of day, what you wear, even like what you read. I think reading is a fantastic way to enter kind of this area if you're uncomfortable with it, right? We're reading erotic fantasies, or, like if anybody's on TikTok, Book Talk is a fantastic place to go to. That'll give you all kinds of really great options for like some good books out there. But also, I really think that if talking about this or thinking about this makes you really uncomfortable, then exploring the beliefs that you grew up with that, were around sex. Like if they weren't the healthiest or they were uncomfortable, or you were told certain things, like you can nurture and reframe those into more healthy beliefs now, whether you're in your 30s or 60s, right? So another really cool stat for you is 50% of American women from their 20s to their 60s own at least one vibrator, and married women are more likely to own more than one. So like, you're not alone and don't feel ashamed, right? Practice giving yourself pleasure, and then practice asking your partner for what you want.
Okay, so then the next one is prioritizing joy and pleasure in all areas of your life. So this is honoring your sex drive by making time for non-sexual turn-ons in your life. So there's Esther Perel, who says, when times are good, eroticism is what converts the mundane into magic. When times are tough, eroticism is what inspires us to survive, even to thrive despite all odds. So essentially, creating an erotic sensibility with activities that will make you come alive and feel alive. And these aren't activities in the bedroom. Do you love salsa dancing? Do you love listening to some really awesome jazz music while cooking a fantastic meal? Maybe you love art and you love to paint. Maybe it's playing an instrument. Maybe it's being at the beach or going for a hike. All those things that make us feel good, that bring us pleasure, that turn us on in other ways and really make us feel alive. They help to decrease stress in our body, increase that oxytocin, which is going to bring that cortisol down. And they often use our minds and bodies together. They make us excited or feel full of passion. They feel like they put us in a state of bliss. So doing things routinely like that can really help improve your sex drive as well. So I always say, like, I'm a big mountain girl. I love the mountains. There's something about the mountains, like literally every time I hike, I like get emotional. It's like a very weird thing. Like when you get to the top, or even when you're like taking breaks, it's like, I just find it so overwhelmingly like beautiful, or almost, or like it makes you realize how like, it's kind of weird, but it makes you feel like insignificant, as to like gives you references to how big the world is. And like, I don't know, it's just like this whole thing that I kind of go through. And I always find it super, super emotional. But I think that's like figuring out what that is for you. Like maybe I'm like that with the ocean sometimes too, like beaches and stuff, certain places, or maybe it's like memories of certain things, but it's like figuring out where, like, what things kind of bring that like emotional joy. If you can find that, like, it changes things a lot for you, not just like sexuality and stuff too, but like it will change things a lot for you in a lot of different ways. So like trying to figure out what that is for you can be huge. It doesn't have to be like, I gotta try to take a trip to the mountains or the ocean. Like, it could be like dancing. It can be like, there's so many different options. So figuring out what that thing is that just like brings you that like joy, that bliss.
Yeah, super important there. I think you are right too. The important part to realize about that is that piece isn't just about the sexual part of it. It's about you as a whole person, right? What makes you feel better? What turns you on as far as like feeling alive and feeling like you are enjoying life? Because like, we need to enjoy life. We need to do things that make us happy. I think all of us live in I know I'm guilty of it, right? We just live on such a day-to-day, okay, I got to do this stuff today. And then that's okay. At the end of the day, I'm making my dinner. Oh, it's already bedtime. Tomorrow I'm going to wake up and do it again. And we're losing that sense of joy that we can find in those things that we really love. So really, really important. I am going to talk about pain because I know that that's a huge piece that women often are talking about. So I want to say, like, you do not have to live with pain. And I'm going to say that again. You do not have to live with pain. Don't let anybody tell you that it's just your age. It is what it is. And you got to accept it. It's normal because remember, we always say, could be common because everybody is feeling it, but it is not normal, right? So that means you don't have to deal with it. So, of course, as we age, changes happen to our hormones. Therefore, our pelvic floor changes, our vaginal tissues change, right? But we don't have to just deal with it. So we've talked a lot already about different things, like we've talked about HRT, we've talked about estrogen creams, we've talked about lubes, we've talked about supplements. Pelvic floor exercises, which we mentioned, right? But those can be really helpful with pain. They bring blood flow back to the pelvic region. They increase lubrication. They can help with urinary incontinence symptoms if you're experiencing those. If you're having pain with penetration, which is actually really common as our vaginal tissues get thinner, there are lots of wonderful options, and I think people don't know about them, right? Because again, we're not really talking about these things. But things like, again, HRT and lube can be really helpful, but pelvic floor exercises that focus on relaxation of the pelvic floor, because we can strengthen, but we also want to keep the pelvic floor also able to relax because both are equally important. You can work with a pelvic floor physiotherapist or a pelvic floor physical therapist, right? And there's this fantastic invention called the O-Net, which will allow a woman to control the amount of penetration that happens. So if penetration is really uncomfortable, then there are options out there to make it more enjoyable, especially while you work on other methods like the pelvic floor physical therapy or the exercises. There's even things like vaginal dilators that can be really helpful if penetration is really, really painful, and they can help build you up to being able to have intercourse again. So
yeah, pain is common. It's not normal. Like, just because a lot of people suffer from it does not mean that that's supposed to happen. So don't let people slough you off for that. The next one is actually a digital detox. So here are two very interesting facts for you. One of the biggest reasons that 20 to 30-year-olds are having less sex than they did in previous years is because of technology. And two, in a 2015 study of 150 married couples, 70% of those said that technology was interfering with their sex lives. I mean, we all know the picture, you and your partner, you're laying in bed together, you're scrolling on separate phones or devices, or maybe you're watching TV, you put them down, you go to sleep. You're not connecting with each other. You're not talking together anymore. You're not learning. You're not discussing things, right? So this is where tech boundaries can be incredibly helpful. So set a time for your phones to be off and down. You can have a timer that turns off all your apps except texts and phone calls from like a certain time, like 8:30 p.m. to 7 a.m., for example. So there's no scrolling, there's no notifications or checking emails one more time. Then use that time to connect with each other, look at each other, make eye contact, hold hands, have a conversation, get a foot rub. Maybe watch a TV show together while you hold hands. We already know that technology can disrupt sleep, mood, brain chemistry, and now our sex lives. So putting boundaries on how we use it will have multiple effects on your life as well. Taylor and I love watching Love is Blind. Today is Valentine's Day when we're recording this. And the new season comes out and we're so excited. But I remember we were watching it and was it this show or maybe it was a different show. Anyways, they were like, what do you call it? She was like, I don't feel as connected to you. Like, there's not enough physical touch. She's like, well, I don't think married couples just like sit around watching TV holding hands. Taylor and I literally, if we're on the couch, we're always holding hands. And we just looked at each other and started laughing. But he's also the only person that I've ever done that with. Like, if we are watching a TV show or a movie, even in bed, we are always holding hands. Always. And like, I just thought that was super funny because she's like, I don't think married people, or he's like, I don't think married people just sit around watching TV holding hands. We just looked at each other and just burst out laughing because we're like, is this weird? Is it weird that we do this? Do other people not do this?
That's so funny.
Oh, yeah.
I don't think I don't know. I mean, I've been married for 14 years now. So, and we still hold hands when we watch TV. Actually, more often than not, I'm getting my husband to rub my feet.
I do that
but
too.
that's still physical touch.
Well, because like I'm an osteo, right? So like I will work on Taylor's shoulders sometimes. He'll rub my feet for me sometimes. That's something that I like. But like we're very like if we're watching TV, like it is very rare that like we aren't like touching, whether it's holding hands or like my legs are on him or something. Like we're always touching, which I think is super funny because everyone's like, you watch these TV shows, people are like, oh, that's so weird. And I'm like, am I weird? Am I different? I don't know what's happening here.
No, keep that. I think it's an important part to have. Oh, okay. So I'm going to chat a little bit about just like herbs and food and stuff like that. Because you know me with my functional nutritionist background, this is a big part of things that I like to see what else we can do as far as food and everything goes. So like, of course, like eating foods that feel good for us and feel good for our body is going to be like the very first thing that we want to do, right? Nourishing yourself. Eating enough food is 100% important. Without that proper caloric intake, like you can't even think about having a libido. It's one of the first things that's going to go, right? But focusing on adequate fats will help with supporting hormones, making sure we have adequate hydration to help with keeping tissues hydrated, making sure we have lots of gut-friendly foods like those that are rich in the prebiotics and the probiotics. They help keep vaginal flora and bacteria happy, so we have a healthy vagina. And foods rich in like phytonutrients will help keep our vaginal tissue really healthy. As always, like my motto is food first, then lifestyle, last is supplementation. So if you're sitting here going, I've done all that, Brittany, like, so what else can I try, right? So some helpful herbs are adaptogens, right? We've already talked a little bit about ashwagandha, but there's one called shatavari and there's also maca. Both of them are really helpful in low libido, especially low libido associated with depression and the antidepressant use, which can be really, really common in that perimenopause and menopausal stage. Red ginseng is also a fantastic herb to use. It is associated with improved sexual function. It does disrupt sleep as it is super energizing. So I say keep it away from bedtime or stick with like the other options. And St. John's wort is also a really fantastic herb. It can help just enhance general well-being, but feelings of sexual well-being as well. It can make birth control pills or contraceptives like less potent or less effective. So always kind of keep that in mind. And then there is a supplement called Argin Max. It has a bunch of different stuff in it: ginseng, ginkgo biloba, damiana, minerals, but they all can increase sexual desire, satisfaction, even like clitoral stimulation, and increase frequency of orgasms. And then CBD is actually a fantastic way to enhance sexual pleasure. But if you're also dealing with pelvic floor pain or vaginal pain, it is a fantastic way you can get a lube with CBD in it. And it is just, it really, really helps a lot of clients of mine. So if you have, like I said, pelvic floor pain, if you have endometriosis, anything like that, that's going to be a really helpful thing for you. And then the last thing that I'd like to talk about is my favorite thing, So this is changing your mindset. So I don't know if any of you guys have ever heard the saying mother or maiden mother crone. This is how women are described in their lifetime, right? So it identifies for us as females, like where we are in our lives. So the maiden is a child, right? And this is as we're growing up through puberty, and we turn into the mother after we have our own children and we raise them, and then we grow into the crone, right? And so oftentimes we think of the crone as this old woman. And I want to challenge that old view of menopause and old age and look at it through the lens of a crone like this, a woman who is wise, who is powerful, who is revered, who is an honored elder, who is knowledgeable about life, but who also knows her own pleasure and her own power, and her passion infuses all areas of her life. So I think if we change our mindset about aging in general, but really hitting that perimenopause and menopause state, and we flip the script and we're like, actually, I know a heck of a lot more than all of you. And look at all these things that I have learned about myself and life and, being in relationships in general, and how to enjoy myself and how I can make this life as full of passion as I possibly can. I think that's really where a big change is going to happen. So,
and I think too, it's like, yes, we're talking about all these things and hopefully it's helpful for you guys, but I know a lot of people are like, okay, but realistically, like, is this actually going to change anything? Like, what are the chances? I remember I think it was last year. It must have been early last year. One of our clients, I believe she was working with Beth at the time, and she messaged me just like so excited. It was honestly one of my favorite messages. I still have it saved on my phone. Like I have it in my favorites. I could pull it up, but it went along the lines of, oh my gosh, I have never felt like this in so long. It was like, I remember her being like, my husband brushed my leg the other day when we were getting off the couch, and all of a sudden I was turned on. I felt like a teenager again, and it was amazing. And then she's like, can you sign me up for another 3 months? I was like, sure, we can do that for you. But she was just like so excited. And then I actually had a husband of a woman that we were working with, and I like actually knew them like personally. But he messaged me and he was like, you gave me my wife back. Like, I feel like we're like back when we like were first married before we even had kids. He's like, her sex life has improved. Her energy is better. Like she's the woman that I married. Like she's back. So it's like, we think like, okay, realistically, how much is this going to help? Is it really going to change anything? And the answer is yes. Like if you can eat appropriately, get what you need in your diet, it can make such a huge difference for your hormones, but then for your libido through that. Because like Brittany said, like when you aren't eating enough food, your body starts like cutting off things that aren't essential, right? And hormone production is one of them. The last thing your body wants, even if you're in perimenopause, even if you can't have kids because you don't have a cycle anymore and you're postmenopausal, the last thing your body wants when you aren't getting enough food is for you to end up pregnant and have to carry on a baby because you can't support it because you aren't eating enough. So your body will just shut down your libido. So this happens regardless whether you can have kids or whether you want kids, it doesn't matter. Your body just shuts that down because it's being protective. And I think that a lot of people just don't make that connection. So if you can start eating in a way that actually supports your body, so getting the kinds of foods that you need and making sure you're getting enough food, getting the protein, getting the carbs, the fats, all the things that you need, it can make such a huge difference for you. And low libido is something a lot of women talk about. Like typically when we're doing an intake form with someone and they're asking for us to help them calculate their calories and stuff, their concerns are usually like, one is actually usually energy. That's the most common one that we see. They're like, I just want to have energy and sleep back. I'm freaking exhausted and I'm tired of being tired. The second one is typically around weight gain, weight loss. But the other one's libido. They're like, I just don't feel like myself. And I feel like I'm letting down my husband or my partner, or I feel like I'm just not present. And I feel like we're drifting apart. And I feel like this is my fault because I'm not interested in this stuff anymore. And I'm just so tired. And it's a very common narrative that we see a lot. And a lot of women get very emotional about it because you're carrying this burden that you think it's all your fault. When really it's like, okay, like, yes, we've done things that have not been great for our libido and our hormones, but it doesn't mean we can't fix it. It's going to take time, but you'll get there. So I think just a lot of women just put so much pressure on themselves and they're just ashamed and they don't want to talk about it and they're embarrassed and they feel so poorly about themselves that like then when we do start to talk about it, it's like usually an emotional floodgates that opens right away. But then knowing like there are steps that we can take to improve that, it's so comforting. And like everyone just feels bad when like relationships start to turn, right? Like when things aren't the way they used to, we just automatically start blaming ourselves, right? And then going through that cycle. So knowing that, you know, there's a lot of things that you can do, and hopefully this has been really helpful in giving you the freedom to try some different things and really understand libido and sexual desire and how your body functions, and to not feel shame around this anymore. I really, really hope that you got that out of this today. So find those things that make you feel good, pursue your passions, do the things that make you feel alive, pursue connections with your partner, do what feels good, nourish your body, and your sexual desire will follow with that. Because if you're not happy, if you're not doing the things that fill up your cup, if you're not living a life anywhere near close to your ideal day, of course you're not going to have desire, you know? So we have to focus on those things a lot. Anything that you want to add to any of that, Brittany?
No, I think that you said it all perfectly. You cannot function on a sexual level or even just a happy level when your body is not functioning at its, optimal, right? So if we're not feeding our body enough, if we're not taking care of our body in the sense of doing things that are good for us, or having conversations with our partner about, hey, I'm struggling with this area, or I need help, or, I really want to share this information with you about how I'm feeling. I don't know if it's taboo. I don't know if we just don't have those conversations with our partner. I talk to my husband about everything, my poor husband, but he hears everything. We have a really, really open relationship. And so we've always met challenges like this head on. He's always known exactly like the struggles that I'm having, where I need help. He hasn't always stepped up to help me, but we have married now for 14 years. We have gotten to the point where we have figured that out a little bit better. But it isn't all on you, right? Like you said, we tend to think things are going wrong, or they're not as good as they used to be, so it's all my fault. And it isn't always your fault. Sometimes it's the fact that you just don't have energy. And how can you do all the billion things that there are for us to do in a day without having proper sleep and proper energy and not fueling your body properly? And so really stripping it down to the bare basics of, okay, am I sleeping? Am I eating enough? Am I connecting with somebody? Am I moving my body in a gentle way that also feels really good for me? And those are kind of like the basis of where to start. And then you can kind of build on that. And you would be so amazed at the things that follow just building that base to that pyramid, right? All of a sudden you're like, oh, wow, I'm sleeping more. Oh, wow, I'm feeling better. Oh, wow, I feel happier. Oh, hey, look, now my libido is coming back, and I do feel a little bit more like myself. And then it just continues to build on each other. So,
and this is a lot like asking yourself, like, what does an ideal day in your life look like? Like, what does an ideal week look like? Like for me, physical activity has always been really important, and I am crapping the bed on that right now. And I know that's part of the reason I don't feel so great right now. And like, I'm a little bit like, obviously I've got hormones and stuff going on because I'm pregnant, but it's a very important part of my life. And I have always loved exercise. It's been like my first love when it's come to like coaching. And then but I've always been part of a community. Like there's always been like a gym felt like home. And I had a few of those back in my old city that I worked in. And I haven't found that here yet. So I've actually just hired like a trainer that I'll be joining to like get myself in that community again, because I know that I need it. And part of like my ideal week is I want to be working out 2 to 3 days a week. Like that's what I want. And I'm struggling. I'm not enjoying it the way I used to. And it's like, how can I find that joy again? I need to find like the environment, the community, the people. So I'm doing that. And it's like, even as coaches, like we still need the support, we need the accountability, someone to help us get us closer to that ideal day. Because it's hard. Like it's important to recognize what are the things that fill up your cup. How can you ensure that you're actually doing them? And for me, I'm at a point that's like, I have a gym membership. I have dumbbells in my living room. I still don't work out as often as I want to. So it's like, okay, if I can just convince myself once a week to work out at home and then be with a trainer 2 days a week, amazing. Then I'm so happy. But it's like, I'm at a point that even though I want to do it, I'm not doing it. So like, I need to pay someone so I don't feel like I'm not going to skip out on a session because I'm going to feel bad about letting them down, but it's going to help me get closer to like build that up again so that I can do it. Right. So I think it's like when you need to reach out for help and stuff like that, just do the things, figure out what you want your day to look like. And then if you're having trouble figuring out how to actually accomplish that, like maybe you do need help and that's fine. Like maybe it's you want to read more, maybe you're joining a book club. I don't know. Like there's so many options just to help you actually achieve what you want in terms of like, what do you want your life to look like? Because I think we're so focused on, you know, we want to obviously not be tired, but everyone's focused on weight loss. But yes, it's important. We want to be healthy. But if you're not happy, it's not going to matter anyways. You're going to lose 50 pounds or 20 pounds or whatever it is you want to lose, and you're still not going to be happy. So doing this piece is just as important as any other piece.
Yeah. And you're right. I think people think as coaches, we have it all figured out. And I am majorly failing in that area of like getting my days together. I homeschool my kids and I work, and we made that shift back to doing full-time homeschool a couple weeks ago, and I am ripping my hair out trying to figure out the best way to set my days up for that, right? And I was sitting there on the floor crying to my husband the other day, and I'm like, I just have so much work, and I feel like I'm letting that down. I feel like I'm letting my kids down. And he goes, Brittany, what would Steph say if she saw you crying like this? She would say that you need to prioritize yourself and figure out how a day works better for you and what do you want it to look like. And I'm like, okay, thanks so much for that. So
that's
very
so
true.
funny.
We all need help. But it's, being able to set your day up or your week up in a way that works for you and makes you feel good and makes you not feel like you're ripping your hair out or you're not getting time for yourself is really, really important. So the change that I know that I feel when I do have that time versus how it's been the past couple of weeks where I don't have as much of that time is huge in the way that I am able to even just function on a level of happiness, right? It wouldn't matter, like you said, it wouldn't matter if I achieved a weight loss goal or if I achieved these other things. The fact that I'm not doing something for myself or giving myself the time to do something that makes me happy or feels good, it doesn't, none of that other stuff would matter because I'm not enjoying it. So
exactly. So hopefully this was helpful for all of you guys. Find your happy. That's like rule number one. Make sure you're doing things that fill you with joy. Because if you're miserable, you're not having sex. Let's face it, it's just not going to happen. So that's step number one. Then taking care of yourself. Try the things that we talked about in the podcast today. And yeah, I hope you found this helpful. And if you need anything at all, you know where to find us. And we'll talk to you soon. Bye.